Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Michael, though many of you know me as Zenith. It's my pleasure to introduce Devin Proctor today. He is simply an expert in anthropology, sociology, and education. After getting his bachelor's at New York University, he went on to get a total of 3 master's degrees, just because you can never get enough grad school, before getting his PhD in anthropology from the George Washington University. As you're about to see, he's done a lot of work in particular in areas close to our interests. His thesis research and many publications and presentations have been about otherkin, therians, non-human identities, and even animism. His presentations and publications have included things like Of Bots and Dragons, Animist Internet Practice, Cybernetic Animism, and Policing the Fluff, the social construction of scientific selves in otherkin Facebook groups. And of course, his Herculean thesis, like 400 pages, on being non-human, otherkin identification in virtual space. As we begin, please remember some topics may be personal for people, so please keep an open mind. We absolutely hope that everyone here learns something, not just something factual, but conceptual, that helps you understand the world around you a little bit better. So without further ado, Devin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, no problem at all. I'm waiting to see if the screen switches to me. Are you looking at me right now? Or
yes. And everyone else, you can feel free to unmute your mic if you have something that you want to say.
Yes, actually, I'd like to say if you want to switch between different screens, you can right-click on a person's video feed and click on pin the video.
Oh, interesting.
Cool. The more you know.
So, wow, there you go. So are you looking at me now?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Devin Proctor. As I was just introduced, I'm glad so many of you were able to come out on this Sunday. What I would like to do today is talk about, who I am, what I'm studying, maybe do a deep dig into a couple of the concepts, but more than that, I wanted to kind of do a very loose, more informal question answer discussion kind of a situation, if that is cool with everyone involved. Yeah, this is weird to be doing this just looking at myself on the computer, and I'm used to gauging nods from an audio classroom. I have no idea.
Actually, how about if we just have everyone unmute your mic and don't worry about it, and just like even have a sort of thing occasionally. I think that would help this be a little bit more real, so to speak.
I would show you a video feed of me, but at the moment I'm eating a British Sunday dinner. I couldn't be more British right now if I tried.
Well, I guess I don't need that then in my life. All right. So then I'll just begin. As Michael said, I am Devin Proctor. I grew up in Oklahoma, being from a kind of lefty hippie family in Oklahoma means that my entire life I was kind of, exposed to having ideas about the world that did not necessarily go with those around me for the most part. So I think that's why I initially made my way to anthropology, and my interest in the otherkin community, because it reflects that part of me that I find so interesting, the idea that people can have ideas that seem so completely anti the ideas of those around them, but that those ideas are also based in logic.
Yeah.
Got someone full disclosure, I'm in my my daughter's room right now, and someone's napping, so I'm trying to remain professional in the. So, I first encountered the otherkin community when a friend of mine sent me a link to a Gawker article, because she said, I quote, "I like weird shit on the internet." So I looked it up. And I do. I mean, and who doesn't, if we're being honest? So I looked up the article, I read it, and I found that while the subject matter was fascinating, the way in which it was written about was pretty mocking, and didn't dig very deep to any to arrive at any real conclusions or understanding of the community. And so I thought to myself, this is incredibly fascinating. So someone surely must be doing this work, right? To really get at the heart of what I think is an incredibly interesting phenomenon in contemporary culture, that so many people are identifying themselves in a way that is not human. So I looked into it, and of course, there are a few academics doing the work, mostly in religious studies and media studies and psychology. And of course, they come up with the conclusions you would assume they would. The religious studies people say it's a religious movement. The media studies people say it's because on the internet nobody knows you're a dog, and the psychologists say it's because it's a new form of technologically mediated disorder, right? So of course the anthropologist comes to the conclusion that it's just a new way for people to be humans in the world together, right? So before going into how I see this as a new way of being a human in the world, there's some things I need to put out there. I personally do not identify as otherkin, or I am not. I know there are a lot of furries in this group. Yeah, I'm not a furry either. I am, for all intents and purposes, like the default setting of hegemony. I'm a straight, white, cis, able-bodied, male American citizen, right?
You've got to expect a lot of people claiming you're in denial about that.
Oh, I'm sure I've had in my work, I've had a lot of people say that. I have a big octopus tattoo on my arm too. That doesn't help my argument either. No, a lot of people have told me that I just haven't awakened yet. And hey, I'm open. I'm open about it. I
agnostic, maybe.
Yeah, right. I'm specially agnostic. I think of myself as fully human, but a lot of people have thought of themselves as fully human until they didn't, so I'm not, this is who I am right now. However, as I kind of intimated at before, the community itself and the identity itself is fascinating to me because I think that we are in a moment in human history when so many different identity constructs, and we're seeing a lot of it gain traction in terms of transgender identity, other trans identities, neurodiversity, non-binary identities, multiple system identities. We're seeing so many more people identify in this way that doesn't adhere to kind of a strict Cartesian body-mind duality that has defined humanity and bodies since, the Renaissance. And I think it's exciting to be at this time. And I think, like I said, people were not doing the work with the otherkin community in the academy that I was hoping to see. So, I was getting a doctorate in anthropology. Why not be the one to do that work, right? So, here I am, 10 years, 12 years later. I'm a doctor. Doesn't feel any different. But I am now apparently, if Michael's to be believed, an expert at this now, as much as anyone can be who isn't one of the people themselves. So some terminology stuff for me. I will say people, I will say persons. That's because I'm thinking of this in a very anthropological, animistic sense of personhood. Person doesn't necessarily mean human person. A person is just like a sentient thing that has subjectivity, that has, right?
Birds
So
are people too.
Yeah, that's a very good way of going with the terminology. We've been trying to decide how to say, oh, someone is a person, maybe not a human per se. It's an issue that has come up before several times. So that's just cool to see you appreciating that terminology.
Oh, well, I'm
just as inside.
This is part of the thing. I have some presentations to give. This is part of that one. There's a big anthropological history on other than human persons. It's a thing. So hopefully that'll resonate and maybe inform a little bit. So this is now I'm going by a little an outline Michael sent me as a way of kind of starting this out. How would you start this thing out? And I thought maybe I would Beethoven's comment. Another way to be human is kind of invalidating to hear it that way. Yes, that is a very valid point. And I hope to get back around to that later and hope adequately address that, because that is a very valid point in the way I just said personhood.
Yeah, Devin, I remember that that was a aspect you discussed in your thesis later on, and like just your treatment of it was very, very good and very careful, I think. I would say that I mean, I don't necessarily want to like spoil the surprise per se, but like basically it was like, if you were actually that other creature, then you wouldn't be otherkin.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, basically, and yeah, let's go ahead and do it. That after all of my fieldwork with the community, I came to the realization that being in a human body, human bodiedness is an integral part of otherkinity and therianthropy. Because, if I identified as a woman and was in a woman's body, I would just be a woman. If I identify as a woman and I'm in a man's biological body, I'm a trans woman. In the same sense, if you identify as a wolf and are in a wolf's body, you're a wolf, So the human body is an integral part of the identity, of the construct, in a sense that there's a misfitting relationship there. So it is a new way to be a human in the world, in the sense that is a way to be biologically a human in the world. That said, you are a human and you are also a person of a certain type. That personage may not be a human personhood. Does that make sense? Is that kind of the difference between biological humanity and not necessarily human personhood? I hope it does.
I'll unmute because I'm hoping that am I allowed to talk? Like, is the mic actually working? Okay.
Yeah. You're definitely allowed to talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that the mic was like force muted or something.
No. I'm open.
This biological personhood, not biological personhood, this biological humanity thing is just kind of a thing that non-humans like me just have to deal with. It's kind of like at the back of our minds.
Right.
At least I feel.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so it's when you say you have to now I'm going to ask questions. So when you say you have to deal with it, is it something that is there and is kind of a thing to actively deal with, or is there and is just a thing that is always going to be there despite? Makes sense.
Personally, that is a hard question to answer, and it would be, I think my answer would be, what's the difference?
Right.
I still want to be my species typing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my biological humanity is pretty much going to always be there until we have the technology for species transition.
Right.
But so I guess it is like a hybrid of both, because like that humanity nags at you sometimes, and I particularly get really dysmorphic, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I just can't look at myself.
Right.
I just can't do it. It just feels pretty terrible.
Yeah. And that. Mm-hmm.
it like the humanity nags at you, and that's the thing you have to actively deal with.
Right.
I feel.
Right. And which is, I think, what I'm getting at when I say that the humanity itself is an integral part of the identity, because you having to deal with that is, I would argue, a large part of the experience of identifying in this way. And I think many other non-human identifiers would agree and would feel the same way. And so would people across gender spectrums, neurodiversity spectrums. I would think there would be a similar sense of this bodily dysmorphia, this feeling that it's there no matter what you would have it be. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to say my experience seems to be fairly different from most people I've met, because a lot of I went to Anthrocon and got to meet up with a bunch of Therians there, and their experience was more that their head was that of, say, a fox, but they were in a human body.
Right.
My experience is just, I want a better body, one that's more like me, and one that I like. And it feels like that's different, but people are trying to tell me that's the same, and I'm currently in the middle of trying to process that. I don't really get what's going on there.
Right. I mean,
actually, this actually does come fairly close to a question that I wanted to ask way towards the end. Like, this was like but it's relevant now. But so I'll go ahead and ask it. I am curious about the difference between persona and identity. In your thesis, you'd said persona does not equal identity, which might sound absurd to some furries. However, I think you're onto something, because some people have way more than just one persona, and it would not be realistic to say that, at least in some of those cases, that all of those personas are identities for that same person. Kind of long tail situations like multiple systems aside. So I'm kind of curious. What would you say about someone who has a non-human identity, absent otherkin or spiritual beliefs, where that identity happens to line up with their persona? And what would you say is the relationship between that and you'd use the term plastic identities? So I'm curious about exploring that topic a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I should say, as far as my research is concerned, I did focus on other Cantharians.
Yes.
I did do a little research. Like I did attend a furry convention. It wasn't as big as Anthrocon. It was Furthermore, which is a really small one in Virginia. Because an otherkin interlocutor of mine was doing a presentation there. But through that, I did get kind of a look into the furry fandom. And although, can I, as a quick tangent, furry fandom versus furry community, does anybody have feelings about that? Is it a fandom? Is it a community? Because
fandoms kind of are communities.
I don't know.
Yeah, yes.
Fandoms kind of are communities. I don't really see a difference.
Okay, because
I kind of have some feelings about the people who actually dress. I kind of feel like they're a little bit like the drag queens of species identity, because they put on a character that they can take off, and that's experimenting with species identity in the way that a drag queen will put on a character that they can take off that's experimenting with gender identity.
Right. And to further that analogy and answer the question, in the drag community, someone can be a drag performer and also identify as trans. More often than not, that's not the case. And I think similarly in the furry community, so a lot of my theory, and especially also some otherkin interlocutors, are also furries. And the way they make the distinction is they have this non-human identity, say a dragon, and there's no way that you're going to come up, no matter how much money you have, you're not going to come up with a fursuit that actually looks like the dragon identity, you know, or past life memories of being, because that's, our fursuit technology is not quite that far. And who knows, maybe it will be someday. And so what the fursuit does and what the furry identity does is it acts as a way to, like you said, perform that identity. That said, fursona does not necessarily equal identity. It can equal identity in the case of some other Cantharians, but I would say more often than not, does not, just statistically speaking.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Does that answer the whole question? I'm not.
Yes, actually.
Yes, good. Because that's it gets dicey in the difference between the two, and it can get political in the difference between, when you're dealing with trans identity versus furry identity versus otherkin identity, even otherkin versus therian identities. Lots of deep feelings.
This is something we explore a lot in our podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like we've probably pulled you on like a tangent of a tangent. So
yeah, we should probably get to the thesis, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we? Yes. Okay. So let me. Okay. So, in the thing that I had here, a question was, how did I initially find people who would talk to me? It was very difficult because anyone, as you can imagine, I'm sure, anyone I would approach saw me basically as a journalist who was trying to do like a shock piece about, that you see every October, there will be some piece in some Vice or Gawker or, something about these people who think they're dragons or like the real life vampires of whatever city. So people were not very open to me being involved. And so I remember I contacted a local otherkin group on meetup.com, of all places. And they were having a meetup locally, and I asked if I could join, showed them my scholarship and stuff, and almost was denied because I had done some writing on video gaming, like role-playing gaming in a journal. And the leader of this group was really thought that I was looking at otherkin identity as a type of role-playing, and said that I wouldn't find what I wanted with them, and I was barking up the wrong tree. And so I had to really work around trying to make it very, very apparent that I was coming at this honestly and openly, and as a solid and viable identity construct. So it was hard at first.
You'll find a lot of different otherkin and theory communities kicking around on the internet, and they tend to fall in categories of either really serious ones who will vet who comes in very carefully, or ones who are just there to be some kind of clique for a made-up role play kind of scenario that they will insist is serious, but when you actually drill into it, no, it isn't.
Oh yeah, and one of the first things when I actually did get in some doors, one of the first things I noticed was the heavy policing. Michael mentioned one of my articles, Policing the Fluff. The heavy policing of kin in online groups. So the members would only be members that the other members had decided were serious enough to be a part of the group, and would not make them look silly to outsiders or something. It's one of the first things I noticed. And so then when I did get in, I, of course, attempted to do, because it was my background, I attempted to do some work in online video gaming with an otherkin Steam group that was a total failure. It was in Guild Wars 2, and I spent hours and hours and hours getting up to my level 80 thief, because I didn't want to get in the way during ethnography. I wanted to be able to fight and everything. And after all that time, I finally joined the group, and we went on raids and we did stuff, and then everybody just logged off, and there was no time to ask about anything, right? And the last thing somebody wants to do after a big raid is talk about how they deeply identify themselves, right? That was a wash too. And finally, I found the light of Facebook, as we all unfortunately do, and that was where I kind of started my academic hub, was in the Facebook groups, and then from there, the thesis kind of emerged. Michael asks in his questions to me, how did I do to overcome my obstacles for funding or any relevant regulatory approval? Funding? What's that? No one funded, not a dime, for this entire.
Oh, all right.
Well, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with I'm writing proposals for, boomers in suits who read the proposal and they're like, these people think they're dragons. And every funding agency's got its oversight people, and they don't want to explain to the person above them that they're giving money to this. I would think the triple F would know this problem in a much deeper sense than me.
More for medical research, but I imagine that the priorities of your committees would be not all that different in terms of not actually wanting to rock the boat.
Right.
So,
especially without getting too political, in the current political climate of America, funding for science and education is not
Not a top priority for the.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Not top priority, or existent. And then as far as regulatory stuff, I had to go through my institutional review board at GW, and basically I showed my proposal to the woman involved, and she said, "Oh yeah, furries." And so I had to choose, like, do I go down this path with her and talk about how, no, I'm not, it's not really furries, it's kind of a different thing. But I chose to just be like, yeah, furries.
That's a selective way to not argue about it. So yeah, I get it.
Proving it, she was approving it, so that anything I said would be possibly taking the approval away, and I wasn't interested. All right.
Point, smile and nod.
Yes, smile, nod, take the check, for $0 because there wasn't money involved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they would still have the ability to just like destroy your study, so that's something to, yeah.
And it's a really good thing I did have IRB approval, aside from, not being able to write a dissertation if I didn't. One of the online groups I joined kind of as an observer, as an anthropologist, the person running the group actually asked for copies of my IRB approval paperwork. They really wanted to vet me and make sure they knew I was the academic I said I was. So
that's really cool, actually, that they would do that due diligence.
Right. And which made me very happy. Someone actually asked for it. I worked hard to get that accreditation. I'm glad I got to know to somebody.
Bureaucracy was not to waste.
Exactly. In this particular sense, yes. So, how did I determine there was a problem that needed solved? I think we've kind of actually talked about that a little bit. That there was something definitely happening. It was when I first came into contact with this, I was thinking, this is, as far as the way my mind works, this is something that is not possible. I could not imagine identifying in a way that wasn't human. I couldn't imagine it. Yet, it was definitely happening to a lot of people. And so the problem then became, as I said earlier, why is no one doing the work on this? Why is no one really looking at this and seeing what's going on, what this is that people are experiencing? Because the media surely has done enough work to, mock and discredit, right? The furry community especially, I'm sure you've all had an experience where you say to someone that you're a furry and their only point of reference is that CSI episode, right? I'm sure that's
something along those lines, yes.
Yeah. And it's a sex thing, right? Just the misconceptions that are spread. So I decided to do that work. That if someone was going to do it, I was going to do it. And so this is where I'm going to attempt to be a little fancier here.
I love fancy.
Yeah. Sometimes. Well, it's an attempt. Let me underline that, attempt. All right. So you should be, are you seeing my desktop now?
Yes. Yeah, or at least I am. Is everyone else seeing this?
I'm seeing it as a tiny window. I'm just going to right-click it and see.
Yes, I'm seeing this.
Yeah, I got it.
Excellent.
Oh, there we go. If you click the little button in the top right of it, it will switch to the big one, the big window.
It looks like everybody's able to write on here. Like, I'm able to write like that.
All right. Probably best not to, just for the sake of yeah. I mean, if you want to circle something just for the sake of discussion, then sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Don't draw penises, please, or anything like that.
I would hope we're mature enough not to be so crude.
Professional stuff going on here.
Yeah.
All right, so this is kind of an overview of the dissertation when I defended it. I'm trying to, I left, all my chat disappeared too. Okay, yes, group chat, I got it back. Okay, so, will this play now is the question. All right, yes. So this is just to show my main concepts in the dissertation that I wrote. And I want to talk a little more about the open-bodied identification part of it than the other stuff, but you're going to go through the whole thing just like my committee and advisors did. So I have to, what's interesting about this particular meeting right now is that this is the first time I'm presenting to anyone who actually knows who the other kin are coming in. Usually I have to do this whole thing where I introduce who they are and what they feel. So this is the way I am defining and looking at otherkin, as a group of several thousand people who identify as other than human. They recognize their biological humanness, but nonetheless experience non-human memories, urges, and sensations. And you should also know I use uppercase O, otherkin, as an umbrella term that is about Therians and otherkin, and even when you get into kind of the newer Tumblr fiction kin and fictive kin and fact kin and all of the newer designations. All right, so Therians, Therian or therianthrope identifies as an animal that exists or has existed on Earth, mostly mammals, especially wolves, but also dinosaurs, birds, reptiles, fish, and rarely insects. The otherkin are those who identify as mythological creatures, and beings are called otherkin with the lowercase o. These kin types can come from folkloric mythology, dragons, griffins, unicorns, religious mythology, demons, angels, deities, or modern mythological constructions like extraterrestrials, the Na'vi, and hobbits. And you should know this is, yes, Beethoven. Alter Humanity is a much larger umbrella term. I agree. I actually was not aware of Alter Humanity early on in the work, and so I'm interested to talk a little more about it as a term moving forward.
Regarding otherkin, just regarding otherkin, it would be wise to include in there if people have a spiritual connection to what they believe to be past lives, particularly, those could be past lives as creatures that don't necessarily even exist in these categories. That maybe the people themselves don't even know what that creature is, and they're just trying to kind of match it up to whatever the closest thing is in mythology or in earthly creatures, etc.
Yes, absolutely. I do want to.
I do want to point out that non-human experience does not have to be spiritual in nature. It really doesn't.
And
a lot of people
that was also pointed out by Devin, and that's
okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, and I realize that I'm the difference between this document right here. This document is for a group of people who'd never experienced or been shown this group before. So I'm doing a lot of broad strokes here.
Yeah.
Compared to the 400 pages of dissertation, this is, although in my defense, 50 of those pages are bibliography. So it's...
that's some good research.
Yeah.
Can't help but be thorough, huh?
Well, you have to, man. All those parenthetical citation rings.
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts.
That's how it be.
Indeed. So also something that what really struck me in an anthropological sense about this was I see otherkin experience as a form of animism. But the problem is it arises out of a post-enlightenment paradigm that rejects the infrastructural elements needed for animist thought. In other words, in contemporary Western culture, the idea of magic, spirits, and kinship with natural elements and animals is, while it exists, these things are marginalized. They're not mainstream parts of contemporary Western culture, right? So while I see other Kennedy as a form of animism, we don't have the cultural vocabulary to recognize it as such. So my problem then becomes, how do we talk about it in this world wherein we don't have that cultural vocabulary? Oh yeah, what I just said is written here. So what we do have in terms of these virtualities that other societies have, magic and spirit kinship, what we have is language and internet technologies. And let me explain what I mean by that. I want to look at mediation as the body itself as a mediating object. So departing from conceptions of the body as a disciplined citizen subjectivity or embodied politics, that's all anthropology stuff, I'm approaching it as a media platform mediating a self. So the self is the content here. And cybernetic animism, which is what I really want to talk about today, viewing the body as one platform among many in an ecology of mediated selves within this techno-virtuality I'm talking about of the internet. That creates a type of animism that's thinkable within a Western empiricist post-enlightenment paradigm. So it makes animism thinkable in the contemporary West, which is what I think we need to do in order to make other Kennedy legible and understandable in more of a mainstream sense. It has to be articulated through our own cultural languages. I'll go through this quickly, and if you want to talk about the spectrum of virtuality, we can, by all means. I'm open to that. But this is just a way that I look at the internet as a space, since I'm dealing with the internet as an animist space here. But there is, we are on a spectrum when we're in the internet with the corporeal and the digital on opposite ends, and the different platforms and instantiations of where we are in the internet can be placed somewhere on the spectrum from corporeal to digital. And I would argue that the more towards the digital we go, the deeper the animist relationship with the space becomes, which will become a little more apparent when I talk about cybernetic animism.
That's really interesting. I mean, I don't really have a comment besides that, other than just, that's really interesting, and I want to hear more. Just I don't want to derail this. So yeah.
Okay. Well, don't worry. I've got tons of cybernetic animism to talk about.
Excellent.
Because I felt like that would be the concept today that would be the most useful. And so part of this spectrum, especially within one of my chapters is about, it takes place in Second Life and with an otherkin and vampire group in Second Life, and shows how looking at this as a spectrum, embodiment of avatars can cross the supposed offline-online border, bringing corporeality into the internet. And in the same way that mental and not physical shifts, because I'm not trying to get in trouble, mental shifts and emotional shifts of your kin type can bring the virtuality of this non-human self into your corporeal body. So working together, they serve to kind of blur or even erase the supposed real versus virtual dichotomy. Yeah? I mean phantom shifts. Yes, that's what I mean. Yes, that is what I mean. Thank you. So then later in the work, the spectrum becomes a field and it all gets super complicated, and you're free to, this is being recorded, right? You're free to go back and look at this ridiculous picture and all of its like spectrums of synchronicity and spectrums of virtuality. It's really intense because it's a dissertation, but we don't need to get too deep into it at the moment. The important part about what we're doing today is how cybernetic animism contributes to open bodies. Because I think the other can characterize a larger shift in body identification that's underway in many industrialized countries, away from bounded, biologically defined bodies and towards this more plastic, negotiable type of embodiment that I'm calling open body identification. And this is the kind of stuff that I've already said. Just as trans, non-binary, and fluid identities trouble gender, and neurodiversity troubles mental health and medicalization, otherkin and therian identities trouble species. And these are all troubling these binaries that we have set up that's so much a part of the modern Western world. Binaries like man and woman, binaries like sane and insane, and binaries like human and animal, or human and non-human. These binaries that we're starting to erode and replace with spectrums. And this reflects a larger trend. You can go back and look up these folks as well. They're talking about bodies in a similar way, but not exactly the same. This was kind of my move to the committee to say, see, I'm not the only one doing it. So rather than view these disparate examples of contemporary self-identification, I offer open bodies as a way of describing the larger turn towards plasticity. So not only are otherkin bodies open bodies, I would say trans bodies are, fluid bodies are, furry bodies to a certain extent are, neurodiverse bodies are. I would say more and more, all of our bodies are becoming these more open bodies. And I think the otherkin just serve as a very overt expression of that open bodiliness. Yeah? All right, now let me, how do I get stop share? There we go.
All right.
And I'm back. Yes.
Interesting choice of words there with overt. Because you'll find that being otherkin doesn't necessarily correlate with the person having the choice or the necessarily the want to express their inner feelings openly in human society as it currently stands, because of course we'll have a fear of being rejected, of being laughed at, of humanity generally not understanding them, and of not belonging. So a lot of otherkin I've spoken to have been quite introverted and have generally tried to shy away from public exposure.
Right. So then let me be super clear about what I mean by that. I went back and forth about how to talk about it, because in the first iterations of writing about why otherkinity as a kind of an exemplar of open-bodiedness, I was thinking of them as the most extreme version of open-bodiedness, but that feels too, like, I don't know, exploitative or too, like, shocking, And I think by overt, I don't mean the otherkin themselves. I mean that as a concept, identity as a non-human self very much more drives home the idea of us having open bodies, more so than neurodiversity or fluid gender identity.
That does make sense, because it's just a big departure from a standard human body plan. Right. So I think that's a natural way to put it.
And it also is the reason that it's met with such quick derision in most contexts, because it's so against the way that the modern world has set up what it means to be a human. It goes so counter to that, to think that animal or non-human creature of some sort could be a part of being a person, that it's, I would think, terrifying to people, whether or not they feel like it's terrifying. It's uncanny. It's not something that people can accept because it is so counter.
Yeah, it falls into a sort of uncanny valley.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly the thing that, well, in the uncanny valley, that's when you start to be repulsed by something. I hesitate to use the word repulsed.
It's different. I would personally argue that these concepts shouldn't be mixed. Like the uncanny valley is just if you say draw a character badly, or you have a like a character in a movie that is just like not quite well done.
Right.
That's different from having a well done non-human character. And you have non-human characters in cartoons all the time, and you can't really say that they're
Uncanny.
yeah.
Right. And I think that's the link there. It's that something that is close but not right, so we can't accept it, is what makes it uncanny. And I think in the same way otherkin identity, people have a problem accepting it. They have a problem taking it in, not because it's close to conceptions of normative, human identity, but because it runs so counter to them. So I see your point that it's uncanny in a different sense through a different way. Yes.
Sure.
All right. So my plan after that was to go into another kind of presentation mode thing, specifically about cybernetic animism. However, if people would rather go in some other direction because of something we've just recently said or something you saw in that, I'm open to do that as well. That's all. If anyone has anybody used the raise your hand button yet? Have you seen that?
To be honest, I keep forgetting it's there.
There is one.
Yeah,
That's
I
cool.
can see something like that on here.
Yeah, if you look at
Participants window.
at the bottom and it brings up the list, there should be a raise hand button.
Okay, that's interesting.
And it puts a little blue hand next to your name.
Okay, I'm raising my hand. I would like to just return to the previous presentation for a moment, where you were mentioning about animism. One of those nice little circular blobs that was specifically about animism. There was something in there that I was going to ask a question about, and can't remember what it was now without seeing it again.
Let me. Did I get rid of that window?
Isn't animism a mode of spirituality?
It can be looked at depending on, and that's no, see, that's in cybernetic animism. I was going to go into a lot of that.
Well, maybe we'll just go on with that then.
It can be seen as a type of spirituality, yes. Anthropologists would tend to argue that it is seen inherently as spirituality because the anthropologists and the Western people looking at animist societies saw it as something that had to be spiritual and faith-based in nature because it was so obviously not real or concrete, so it had to be spiritual. When more modern anthropology on animism moves to take animism, they use the words take animism seriously as an ontological state of being, as a way of experiencing life. And then it becomes not an issue of religion, but more an issue of just the way the world is around a person.
That's really interesting. So this, I guess, more modern take on animism is just to say that's a way of experiencing life. Is that what you're saying?
It's a way of experiencing your life, especially in terms of the way you as a thing interacts with the world of things around you, which runs counter to, like I was saying earlier, the Cartesian idea about the body-mind separation. Our bodies are these things, and our minds are different things, and they're never going to meet, except that they do because his theory is flawed. And thus, humans are the only ones who have that particular mix, and all these other animals don't, right? And that's what we've basically had as the concept of humanity since the scientific enlightenment.
Go ahead and dismantle it.
Which is why when we
Please.
I'll do the cybernetic animism thing then. I'll move right into that one.
Yeah.
I've got a there's a big comment in the chat that I want to read before we.
This is personal experience, it sounds like.
Personal. I don't want to make that thank you for that personal experience. I don't want to like make it a object of conversation, if that's fair. Thank you for that though.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let me find cybernetic animism. Share this. All right. Are we there?
Yeah.
I can see it, yeah.
Non-human personhood
You as well?
Okay. Are you drawing on my screen? That's disconcerting to be looking at your
I
own.
tried to erase it.
No, it's weirdly disconcerting to look at your own computer while someone else is drawing on your screen, right? Feels like I'm being hacked.
Oh, it actually shows up. I didn't think it showed up on the screen. I thought they showed up on the. I thought Zoom would show something where it showed up on the screen. I've not tried annotating before, so I didn't know it did that. But it didn't. I always thought it showed up on like a separate interface or something.
No, it was. I was wondering. Yeah,
I didn't know the program could even do that.
Yep.
I have found, as a slight tangent, messing around with Zoom, that it's pretty incredible. I mean,
Apparently,
it's a lot of stuff that I didn't know programs could do. Okay, so just so you know, when while I'm doing this presentation thing, I don't have a view of the participant list. So if you have an introduction or something, could you please do it by voice? Because I can't see the chat when I do this.
I can also keep an eye out for you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's the deep dig. Non-human personhood in the internet. This is cybernetic animism. So this is a concept, even though the dissertation's written, and its proposals are at academic presses right now, and I'm trying to make it a book. Even though it's out there, this is still a concept that can take on critique, so feel free to do so. This concept being cybernetic animism.
Less theories are always adjustable.
Yes, absolutely. Then I'm glad I said that then, or otherwise I wouldn't be one of the best ones. But first we have to go, and this is when I, of course, say who the otherkin are to my audience of people who have never heard of them. This one also incorporated multiple systems. I'm just going to speed through this for you guys. Okay, so my field work with the otherkin started in 2006. And this is I don't know if you're familiar with this site. It's an older otherkin site, which is why I chose it. But in 2006, it had 38 members when I began my field work. About halfway through the field work, it had...
Did you dig this out from the Wayback Machine? Did you dig these out from the Wayback Machine?
No, this is actually from screenshots when I was doing the work. I started my field work in 2005.
Okay.
So
well done for gathering them all with so much forethought then, because there's a lot of things that I saw online when I was around that time, and I didn't keep them at all, and I kind of wish I had.
Oh, I know. And because of the kind of the comparatively low viewership of these sites, a lot of the Wayback Machine really didn't clock a lot of them. because there wasn't that much traffic, right? Oh, actually, wait. This particular one, this 2006 one, was way back in June. I was lying. I did not actually start until the year following, so my fault, sorry. So then in 2011, membership rose to 1,500. And then by the time I was wrapping up my field work, there were 5,500 members of this site, right? Which may not be incredibly surprising, as the internet does work in the 1990s with email lists, internet relay chat, and Usenet. Relative internet population was lower, as was membership in the otherkin community. In the 2000s, when Web 2.0 became, the way we did internet, population rose significantly. And then in the 2010s, when I did the majority of my research, particularly in places like Tumblr and Reddit, you see an explosion of both web use and of and Discord as well. Is that what you're doing?
Telegram.
Dude, I've never had anyone
Yeah,
add.
Discord is really important, honestly.
This is awesome. I've never had anyone add to the presentation before.
It is actually cool, yeah.
Technology,
I don't
bro.
like it.
The only reason that Discords and Telegrams and things like that aren't in this is because I didn't actually use them as field sites, so I couldn't speak to that in an academic sense. So you see both an explosion of web use and of membership in the larger otherkin community. So, and this would all, okay, yeah, we're moving on, I guess. So before we talk about cybernetic animism, we need to deal with the concepts cybernetic and animism, yes? So this is my quick and dirty on cybernetics. It's not cyber in the sense of like CSI cyber or cyberbullying or cybernauts. It's the scientific study of control and communication in the animal and the machine. And I find it so interesting that this initial definition of cybernetics includes the animal in the definition, because in popular culture, cyber has completely lost that, right? It has nothing to do with...
How about cyborg? How about the word cyborg?
Well, yes, indeed, because that is... Oh, we're getting there. I think that's on this one. Cyborg, I will not talk about it yet because I think we're going to get there. If we don't, I will do an aside. So, first order cybernetics came about after World War II missile guidance systems were the first kind of technology they calculated where a missile was going and then did some tests and then figured out after they got information back from those tests where they thought the missile was going to go and then reprogrammed towards the objective. These are called teleological mechanisms because they're based on homeostasis. They want everything to stay equilibrium. So if someone pushes on your right side, you lean towards the push a little bit. That's it. It's just you're taking in information and using that information to adjust what you do. They call that a feedback loop when you get information and then feed it back into the next action.
If I may, this actually sounds very similar to there's like 4 or 5 different levels of proposed autonomy and autonomous vehicles. It was either put out by like the NTSB or National like Highway Insurers, whatever, like one of those. And the first level autonomy, I believe, is just cruise control, like keeping the same speed.
Oh, yeah.
So I just think that that's interesting that even in something totally different time, totally different technology, that equilibrium is still treated as a first level in either cybernetics or autonomy, whichever you call it.
Right. Well, and this first order cybernetic theory went on. I mean, it influenced a lot of other areas of both technology and culture. So I'm not surprised at all that you see it these coming back in different places. Well, let's see if we can make the same analogy or the same modern take on the second order of cybernetics. Anthropologists Bateson and Mead talked about feedback loops in second order cybernetics, being that in first order cybernetics, as you can see on this top picture, the feedback and input happens within that box. That's the machine, right? So the machine sees information and feeds it back into itself and adjusts. So Bateson, Mead, and Wiener, the initial cybernetic guru, they came to the conclusion that the way these machines are designed and also the way these machines are operated also contribute to the feedback that goes into yikes. I'm trying to get back onto this page from the chat. I was dumb and clicked on the chat. Okay. All right, we're back. Are we back? Good.
Yep.
So they saw that the people involved in the machines were actually also influencing the feedback, and called this reflexivity, this larger thing, reflexivity. Autopoiesis coming from, actually, since I did this thing, I've locked out autopoiesis, so forget that's there. We're not going to think about it. The point being that autopoietic thought, this is coming from Maturana and Varela. Why is that happening? Okay. The point being that if we are a cybernetic system, we get information and we feed back that information into our next action. However, all we see is that feedback. We only see what our systematic organization allows us to see, because we have a certain number of senses. We have a certain number of experiences, right? And the feedback we get is all dependent on our senses and our experiences and how we're going to move on.
I'm starting to see where you're going with this. I like it.
Right.
Yeah, this is blowing my mind.
So, just really quickly, we have to make sure you know that this is not the same as artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence gathers all of the information about something and uses this database to reach a goal. Yeah? Cybernetics reaches a goal and then incorporates new information based on how that worked out. You know, if I throw a piece of paper at a trash can and I miss, then I throw it a little to the left or harder the next time, and probably still miss, but I incorporated the information.
If I may, this sounds, I would probably just say don't say this to like a computer science researcher, because as far as I know, neural networks would operate more like a cybernetic thing, but I think that they still classify them as being AI.
Interesting. Okay.
So just worth being aware of, and maybe looking at more detail just sometime later.
No, that's a good point. Interesting. Which is why there would be neural networks instead of artificial. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. You just blew my mind after my own comment.
That is what I am here to do. That's why they pay me nothing. Okay.
Well,
how
they're
is
getting a good deal.
What was that?
How is automation related to non-human personhood?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's exactly where we're going now. I mean, I hope you see that. In the end, I hope you see where it went, and if not, take me to task. Okay, please, because now we're getting into, and they will link up at the end. But first, some history. I'm looking at animism as the attribution of an animating power to natural phenomena, living things, and inanimate objects, and that's it. That's the base definition for me. You're attributing an animating power to something that is not human or animal. Yeah. In early anthropology, people like Tyler called it a primitive belief in spiritual beings. This is not our proudest days. Lévi-Bruhl called it pre-scientific, thus pre-logical. So it's not that they're simple, it's just that they didn't know any better.
Ironically, I would say that these early beliefs are primitive.
Right. This is primitive anthropology, absolutely. Yes.
Anyway.
Durkheim then says, well, it's fine because it reinforces social solidarity. So whatever the belief is, it doesn't matter because it's really just about us reinforcing solidarity. So following Durkheim in kind of mid-century anthropology, they took the emphasis off that spirit and went more with his like social solidarity stuff. So people like Levi-Strauss said that it's just part of a larger complex classification system. You know, we have language and mythology and fairy tales, and they have this. It's not that it's real, it's that it works as a good analogy for them.
And for blue jeans.
And Evans Pritchard, I've been told to say it that way, even though it makes me itch. It has its own internal rational logic. It may not be rational, but internally it has this logic, right? So that's the old school of anthropological animism studies. More recently, and modern stuff, which I kind of got into earlier, it becomes about ontologies, or like ways of being and experiencing life. Hallowell calls them non-human persons. Bird David calls it a relational epistemology. Ingold calls animism a type of being in the world, riffing off Heidegger there, if I have any Heideggerians in the audience. This is known as the ontological turn in anthropology, where people started to take it seriously as a way of being in the world, as a way of experiencing your life. So, and this mostly right now, the ontological turn is happening with Amazonian tribes through Vivero de Castro, Kohn and Descola, and in Siberia with the Vishlev and Ultergasheva, which you don't need to know, but this was at an anthropology conference, so they needed to know that stuff.
There are some fascinating media coming out of the tribes in both places at the moment, actually, as they're getting onto the internet. And they're starting to share some of their culture.
Awesome. I would, if anyone is interested in one of these, if you want to take a closer look at one of these, if you look at Villerslev's work with the Yukagir hunters in Siberia, they hunt elk, but the way to get to the elk and not scare the elk is you have to become more elk. So as you get closer to the elk you're hunting, you have to become more and more of an elk yourself.
Well, what you eat.
Exactly. But therein lies the danger, because if you become too elk without hunting the elk, you get lost. And you end up either waking up in the forest days later, having lost time, could because you were living as an elk, or you never come back. So there's a danger to giving into your elk side. So I think that's fascinating, and you should read it.
It is.
Definitely sounds interesting.
Right. It's anthropology. It's super interesting. But so here is where animism and cybernetics meet. One of these ontological turn folks, Descola, he talks about your experience. As does this go? Yes, your experience is dependent on ontological filters. He says, experience depends on a vast amount of qualities and relations that can be actualized or not by humans according to how ontological filters discriminate between environmental affordances. And anyone who does like tech stuff or internet stuff knows the word affordance is thrown around a lot in that. And I think that's why he's using it in this sense. So what an ontological filter is you only see what culturally and experientially you know is going to be there. And his argument is that people in indigenous animist societies have different ontological filters than we do. They simply experience things that are there that we do not experience because we don't know to experience them.
It's a matter of what to pay attention to.
Exactly. Or even the ability to pay attention to something, the experiential and bodily knowledge to know to pay attention to something else, because there could be all kinds of stuff around that we are simply not aware even exists. So now we put the two together with something I am tentatively calling Occidental animisms. So, and this gets into a little psychology, which I feel weird about, but you have to. So Jean Piaget, who is kind of the grandfather of early childhood development, says that up to 5 years old, kids in Western societies believe all things have life, thought, and purpose, right? So basically, up to about 5 years old, Western children are completely animist. They believe in an animating force beyond non-human, non-inanimate objects, right? And even up to age 9, they attribute some sort of animating force to things if those things move on their own, like a wind-up toy or something. Even up to age 9, they do at least a little bit psychologically believe in an animating force. Freud talks about an omnipotence of thoughts for children, which is an outward projection of their inner thoughts. That's how he explained it. He said that, well, they have these really fascinating inner lives, so they just project it onto other things. That doesn't make it real. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's real or not, if they believe it's real. And I want to illustrate this using a very popular children's character for many decades, Mickey Mouse. Now, Mickey, we tend to look at children as having a pretty, to quote early anthropologists, primitive view of these types of issues. But if you look at our engagement with Mickey Mouse, Mickey has a best friend, Goofy, who's a dog, who wears clothes and goes fishing and does all manner of friend things. He has speech, even. Mickey also has a dog named Pluto, who's naked, who doesn't talk, and who acts as a pet. So children are negotiating this non-human personhood and non-human non-personhood as a matter of course. They're actually very complicated animists when they're young. So what does that have to do with anything, right? This is the point where you are like, I thought I knew where he was going, but I've lost track, right? So by far, most of Tumblr and Reddit users, for instance, are between 18 and 29. Those users have grown up in a media ecology of children's programming that has the same type of animist relationships like Mickey Mouse and his 2 dogs in his life. And in many, like there's a popular show where there is a cactus is one of the main protagonists in a town littered with inert cacti, and that's not a problem for them. It's just personhood and non-personhood in inanimate objects. The thing is, these kids are starting to use the internet at younger and younger ages. So this is a real picture of the inside of the internet. So while these kids who are fully ensconced in media that does not unteach animism to them, because in the past we've gone to school and we've had these animist thoughts untaught. We've been told they're childish. We've been told it's not the way the world is because science. Now these kids are on the internet, even at school sometimes. So they're a human. And they're talking maybe to another human. They're also talking to a bot. They're also talking to an algorithm. They're interacting with these things. They're interacting with affordances and avatars of other things. But in order to exist within this framework, you have to, and human being autopoietic, the only input they're getting is what they see of these. So you're not entirely sure if that's another autopoietic human, or if this bot is an AI bot, or if this algorithm is AI. You don't know who is human and who is not. And you don't know who's a person and who is not. And the best way to deal with this type of situation, a fully animist situation, is you have to assume personhood all around, because you don't know. All you're getting is the information of what you see. So from a young age, kids are starting to engage in an animist environment in internet virtual space.
Oh, this very much connects to a book I read a while ago by Sue Thomas. It's called Technobiophilia, and it goes through all the ways in which analogies have been built into technology and the internet and computers to kind of make people feel at home and to maintain some kind of connection with nature.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I would argue that in these constructions of these digital spaces, what we're doing is we're having people interact. So my long definition, since you finally got through the whole thing, of cybernetic animism is the practice of interacting in digital spaces within an ecology of non-human and or non-bodied elements. So they may be human, they may not, because they're non-bodied, we don't know. And it is also the process through which this interaction makes open-bodied identification available as a way of being in the world. I argue, big takeaway, big small takeaway. I'm arguing that because we interact in these spaces and have increasingly at young ages, when we had not yet unlearned our animist engagement with our world, we are starting to awaken things within ourselves that perhaps were already there. Our ontological filters are changing, and we are beginning to adopt identities, or not adopt, but recognize identities that are open-bodied, in a sense that they are no longer defined by the body we inhabit, because so much of our experience in life is in these non-bodied contexts and interacting with other things who are also non-bodied. And that is my take on cybernetic animism.
Yeah,
and
that's really cool.
A possible insight into why we are seeing so many more people identify in this way in the contemporary moment.
I'd like to just go back to the point where you had feedback loops in that presentation quite early on. You had a box with a feedback loop, and then you had one below it labeled engineer, and you had a bigger feedback loop around it. So that was a second order feedback loop.
Yeah,
and that's of control, isn't it?
Yeah.
So essentially, you can say the machine has its own internal controls and feedback loops, and then you've got the engineer who controls the machine with their feedback loop of taking the output of the machine and deciding what to do with it and putting in the input.
Yes.
Okay, so a third order feedback might be, for example, the manager of that engineer in the company. It could also be, if we're looking at this from a personal perspective, I was just sort of extrapolating in my mind when I saw this slide. You could say that somebody who has a spiritualist perspective could be putting a third order feedback loop around the person, which is the soul or the spirit, controlling the sort of, the overall output of what the experiences are in life, and then the input of what to do next with that. Perhaps there's various ways one could go down that route, many of which will probably be quite religious sounding. I wouldn't blame you for thinking so.
Right.
I just reckon that there's a lot of potential avenues of exploration there, which will have varying degrees of potential to be scientifically summed up or not.
Right. So yes,
if you look at that in the context of otherkin, though, and what what an otherkin person thinks has happened to them in the past, for example, past lives, where their spirit comes into the equation, or where their identity is in their body, and how that came to be. There's a lot of possibilities around that diagram, I think, for exploration.
Right. The engineer part, the top could be your input is your experience, your biofeedback, right? Like if you have a phantom limb, or you experience past life regressive dreams, or you have a feeling you're in the wrong body, that could exist within that box, because that feedback is telling you that you have a non-human identity, right? But then this bottom one would be, why do I think I have that? And then your own readings, your own experiences, your own philosophies would loop back into your explanations for your own otherkinity, right? So
that's a sort of an inverse of what I was saying, but it works just as well.
Wow.
I'm sure that we can find a lot of feedback mechanisms everywhere.
Right.
It's just like, where you look, you'll probably find one.
And that's the other point to make, is that these tribes and such that you've mentioned, in Siberia and places like that, they look at things differently. They notice different things, and they may notice different feedback loops and mechanisms in the world, in society, in each other, in their spirituality, which don't necessarily come up in Western civilization so often.
I suspect that part of it, at least part of the anthropological understanding here, might be that those societies themselves might have created their own feedback loop system in a way. Would that be accurate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's in the same way that we say, someone will make a claim and we'll say, well, that's not scientifically accurate. You can't empirically prove that that's a thing, so you can't claim that it's a thing. In many indigenous societies, they will say, in the same way they say, well, yeah, but that's not how magic works. I've seen magic work, and that's not how it works. So that's obviously not true, So they do have their own. We all have our own built-in ways of checking whether or not something is a viable way of experiencing something, or a viable way of looking at something. And they're just so wildly different fundamentally that, and this is why I chose to go the route of internet embodiment and to use cybernetics and to do something so very, very Western and technical and scientific, because I wanted to find a way to describe this experience that is so counter in a way using language that we in the Western world tend to think of as irrefutable. Do you know what I mean? As super scientific.
That's really cool.
There's a couple more things to mention there as well. Have you heard of Dr. Temple Grandin?
Yes. Yeah.
So her work on autism and understanding the autistic mind, and also her work on animals, farm animals, and how their behavior relates to their genetics and everything else. She, I think her most important point she made with some of these things was animals notice things differently too. They have a different perspective on what matters. And even so much as a simple, a random piece of hay on the ground for a cow might matter a lot more than it matters for the person trying to get that cow down a chute into a slaughterhouse or something. And she was able to change completely the way that farms operated and make them much more efficient just by making very simple little changes.
Right. And I think
sorry, just to carry on there, she was saying these things matter so much to the animals. We never notice them, but it's obvious to somebody who's autistic, and that brings in the neurotypical and not neurotypical spectrum. I think there's a lot of crossover between these different spectra that really matters here. An awful lot when you're talking about freedom of form as well.
Well, and I think that I would hope when I say open-bodied identification, I am including the neurodiverse spectrum in that. I think that it's a way to understand our bodies and ourselves within our bodies in a way that doesn't adhere to these dichotomies. That doesn't make autism by definition a disorder. It's just as a different place on the spectrum of where to be where to be a person, right?
So like a different mode of being.
And I know in the autism spectrum community, the ASPE community especially, there's a lot of talk of the benefits of an autistic designation. There are even people who argue that autism is an early step in the next evolution of humanity. I mean, there's a lot of different voices in the political aspect of this, but but just as a different way of being, a different way of experiencing life on Earth as a person.
Probably something we could talk about for many hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I have on many occasions.
I hope actually that you'll join us in our Discord server after this, so that we can continue the conversation in the longer term.
Yeah, I have to deal with children dinners after this. That's
I mean, obviously, in between life in general.
Right. I don't know if I said I'm sitting in my daughter's room right now, and she just had her first week of kindergarten, so that's why I'm drinking a lot. I have whatever Black Plague 5-year-olds spread amongst themselves right now, so I'm sorry if I'm drinking and scratching and things.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So am I taking the cue that we're winding down?
It depends. Is there more for you to present?
No, I mean, well, yes, there's hours of me to present, but I hadn't planned any other specific presentation slides for this one.
I do have a question that someone submitted that was asking more about detail with phantom limbs and extrasensory perception. They also asked about heightened awareness and links to otherkin. Okay. So yeah, just for the sake of that question, I'd be curious about maybe going into additional detail with that, especially the phantom limbs part.
Yeah. As far as what they are or what
it's not totally explained in this question.
All right. Well, my feeling about, and I urge you all to read my 400-page dissertation. I talk a bit specifically about phantom limbs in the 3rd chapter, about how the science of phantom limbs, like the science of phantom limbs, is still pretty. They're still not entirely sure what's happening. There are arguments on either side, whether it's a neuromatrix that our brain makes a diagram of our body, and that's what we're actually feeling rather than our nerves themselves. Our nerves then go through that diagram to the brain, and then we feel stuff, which is why phantom limbs happen, because it's the diagram itself that's telling us. then other people say it's just deadened tissue that experiences pain in a different way that makes it feel like a phantom limb. But I would say otherkin experiences of phantom limb syndrome argue against that, because it's not that a person had wings that were amputated. It's that the person's self has or has had wings. And so I would lean more towards the neural matrix. Your self has a diagram of a body, and that's what the brain is feeling. Other than that, I mean, of course, I have some of my interlocutors have talk about getting their tails shut indoors and people stepping on them or sitting on their tails and wings. But that's just anecdotal stuff from my interlocutors. I haven't experienced it, so I can't really speak to that. Really.
Personally, not being an academic myself, I'm having a hard time understanding how cybernetic animism actually projects onto an understanding of non-human identity.
Okay.
This actually sounds very similar to a question that Bladen was asking. So just for the sake of maybe combining them, I'll go ahead and voice Bladen's question. It was in text. Devin, could I ask if you'd see cybernetic animism as an explanation for other Kennedy, or just a way of framing the experiences we would otherwise have but not attribute to other Kennedy? Without the benefit of the internet and related media, I mean.
Right. Okay, yeah, I can speak to both of those. For that second one, kind of both, but so I want to make really, really clear, I'm not arguing in any way that the internet has caused otherkin identity to come about in any way, because that's untrue, because otherkin identification predates the internet. But when you look at Western identity as non-human beings, I'm specifically thinking of the Elven groups that started in the late 60s, based their identity construction, based the structure of their identities in the Elven world of the Lord of the Rings books. And many of them will argue that J.R.R. Tolkien himself, and this gets into multiverse theories, J.R.R. Tolkien himself was channeling when he wrote those books. And I mean, this is where you're getting a virtuality through.
It's also where you'll get a lot of arguments. It's also where you'll get a lot of arguments.
Right. This is what I'm saying. Some people will say this, and my feeling about this is that maybe he was channeling, maybe he wasn't. That's not the important part. The important part is that Tolkien's works are so evocative of a place, and they're so deeply environmental, that reading his works is a type of textual virtuality. It conjures a virtual space of Middle-earth, yeah? And a history and a language, the new languages that he invented for this world. And this was one of the first times, I mean, now we're used to it in the fantasy genre, but this is one of the first times a work of fantasy had done something on this scale, this epic scale, created a world like this, and it affected people very much. And so I think that virtual experience served to awaken several people that then started these Elven groups that became the otherkin community further down the road. And I think that internet engagement offers a virtual environment of engagement in a similar way. Because we're all, as far as media is concerned, we're all much more savvy for media. reading a book isn't going to cause that same type of awakening of a self as it did then, because we just weren't, as a culture, as media savvy then. But now the internet, in my opinion, is doing the same work that Tolkien's books did then, if that makes sense. So it's not that cybernetic animism is a stand-in for otherkin identification or explains it, but I think that cybernetic animism is an experience that makes the prospect of awakening much more viable for more people. As to what otherkinity itself is, as to what the experience is, aside from viewing it as a form of animism, I don't think there is an answer to that question. Even among people who do experience it, it's mysterious. I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot of infighting about what exactly it is.
right. And I do think there's a way to answer that question, because it's bigger than an answer, I think. My suggestion is just that this type of internet engagement makes it more plausible for these awakenings to occur, and more
likely.
Yeah, more likely. Yeah, more likely. Not that they, maybe awakenings that could have occurred without the internet, but the internet provides kind of a push, an opening in ways of self-conception that allow these awakenings to occur.
In other words, because we all get a chance to talk to each other.
Right.
And compare notes.
Yeah. I mean, if I identified as an elf, I would be hard pressed to think of a time when I would like sit on a bus bench and just turn to the person next to me and say that. You know, I would be hard pressed to think of a time when I would feel comfortable to make that declaration in a pre-internet context.
Not only that, but in a sort of, in a world in which somehow everybody was able to perceive what everybody else's self-identification is, it would be completely unnecessary to declare what you are, because it'd be obvious.
Right.
So it does feel very bizarre anyway to have to say, no, you got it wrong, I'm a fox, or something like that, you know.
Right. Yeah. So does that, I see, okay, that does make a lot of good. Bledin is cool with that. I hope whoever asked that question beforehand, that helps answer that.
Yep. Yeah, that was Beethoven as well. Did that answer your question, Beethoven?
Well, I kind of want to be able to explain why these things happen to people who don't experience it. And I guess it didn't really answer in that case.
Right.
But, and another thing is going to be translating all that language you use to explain what cybernetic animism is,
right,
to a layperson kind of deal.
Right. Yeah, you were obviously aiming a lot of that presentation at people who already understand a lot of the terminology that you used.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. That's it is there is that piece, the cybernetic animism, is published as a book chapter in a larger book that's like costs $140 or something on Amazon, but I can make a PDF of that chapter available if you would like. And then you can actually, like, because it's written for a non-anthropological audience, it's kind of parses the stuff out with examples a little more. But I didn't think I had time to do that. I was worried about filling up 2 hours, and we almost did. So maybe I should have included the whole chapter. But I'll definitely make available links to all kinds of stuff. The whole dissertation is open access online, so it's all out there. I mean, and of course, and I'll hopefully be able to get on Discord, and if not, I'll make my email available if anybody has any questions about any of that stuff. I'm very interested in those. As a father of young children, email is a lot easier for me.
Yeah. We have a question from Electron 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're covered.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I guess they're.
I'm gonna turn on your voice.
Yeah.
If you insist. I don't know if is it working or is it not?
Yes.
Okay, working. Perfect. Then yeah, I think it's easier if I just talk by voice. Anyways, my question was, I'm not sure if you already covered it because I went from part to part doing other things at the same time trying to listen. But anyways, my question is, there are some people that actually believe that they have an undead spirit, but also people that are actually embrace it and they change their mentality to it. Mm-hmm. As in, how to say it? They hate everyone else because they don't understand them as much as they understand themselves. If I have examples, people that, let's say, have a dragon spirit, they say, oh, all humans are beneath me. They could say that, and that maybe it's in their beliefs. Maybe that's how they feel. And I was just wondering, is that also part of the other kin? If you embrace it too much, you literally become like a bit there. You embrace too much the mentality, so that you. I'm ranting, aren't I?
I'm not sure what the question is here.
I think that otherkin, like any other group, any other identity formation, any other social grouping of any kind, has fundamentalists, and in any situation, fundamentalists are usually not incredibly healthy for the group, but are also usually statistically pretty insignificant. I mean, if that makes sense. Okay. But I don't see, if you, for instance, identify as a sort of deity, and so you think that humans are beneath you, I don't see that as being that different from like a religious fundamentalist who thinks that other religions are beneath you, or
okay. That's a nice way to see it.
A racial fundamentalist who thinks that other races are, I don't see it as being that different. It's just fundamentalism, which is toxic.
Can I raise a point here that the furry fandom, when viewed from a non-furry perspective, often otherkin and Therians are seen as a kind of fundamentalist, sort of over the top version by those who don't understand us. So it's kind of refreshing to speak to yourself, and you've obviously approached this from a very careful, analytical, anthropological perspective.
No.
So thanks.
I appreciate that.
People hear what they don't understand. Basically, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. So, unless there's any other questions, I think that we are getting pretty close to the end here. So if anyone has any more questions, make it quick. But it looks like we don't, probably. Yeah. So, I have to say, thank you so much for putting up with this for almost 2 hours. This has been awesome, a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure that you've blown my mind at least 3 times during this whole thing. We've got a couple thank yous from Merce in the chat and Electron 2002 in the chat, and Bladen, so thank you so much. I think that we would be interested in the book chapter that you mentioned as well, just, wherever it's convenient for you. Let us know what a good email to reach you is, and we can make sure that other people who have questions for you can ask. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Honestly, thank you. It's a pleasure to talk about this stuff. and not usually when I do this, I get a whole bunch of hands in the audience and they're like, do other kin believe that? And the whole thing ends up being about like trying to teach people about what other kin is. So this was a pleasure as well, talking to people who know what they're talking about and are interested in the more sticky stuff. So thank you as well.
All right. Well,
Amazing.
yeah.
It's like when you say goodbye to someone, but you have to walk across the street in the same direction.
Yeah, it is exactly that. I'm almost at the point where I close the stream, but yeah.
I would love to talk to you some more very soon, though. In text or whatever. So, like,
well, I'm gonna make my information readily available, and would look forward to it.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Bye, guys.
All right. See
Take
ya.
care. That was really cool.
Yep. There.
Well, thank you for the amazing conference. That was nice to hear.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. Thank you.